important realization to realize, like, oh, it's not, the issue isn't always even science here. Sometimes it's just like a truthful account of history.
So it's kind of the what I would consider the evangelical Christian mindset, or not a particular. You're not Catholic. You're Protestant, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, so some people would call it like a non-denominational Protestant. I mean, since then, I've really grown a lot more connected to different denominations and learning about them. Another way it's been put is like, C.S. Lewis talks about the church being a house with many rooms, and there's the hallways between the rooms. And so I've always been a person who's gravitated to the hallways between the denominations, the denominational rooms. And I'm often kind of poking my head in different denominational contexts and learning about them. Right now I'm a visiting scholar with the Southern Baptist Convention, really learning about that a lot. I was also an advisor for a Lutheran seminary for a while. There's an interesting diversity in the church, which, along with some common ground. And I think that's one thing that also I kind of had to learn. I mean, one of the things that was surprising to me, honestly, when I first started learning about it, is Christians have really just thought very differently about origins. And that's where some of the organizations that are out there have done a lot of good by just making a lot of those Christians more known. I mean, I thought that all Christians really just thought the same thing about these things, and that wasn't true, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And not only that, I thought that the view I had as young earth creationist was the traditional view that Christians have really had over the last couple thousand years. That's not true either. I think probably one of the most striking things that has had an impact on my thinking on this stuff is studying history of like what people actually really thought about things and why.
Oh, that's very interesting.
And as you start looking at that, you just find out on an evidential basis, there's just a lot of claims about that people throw out there as obvious that are just not true. I mean, they're black and white issues. It's just not true what we were told. Now, that doesn't mean, for example, young earth creationism is wrong, but it does mean that the type of young earth creationism that we see at AIG, for example, that's not traditional in some pretty important respects. So
AIG is Answers in Genesis, right?
Yeah, Ken Ham's, the Ark Encounter and things like that. And that alone doesn't mean they're wrong, but for me, it was a really important realization to realize, like, oh, it's not, the issue isn't always even science here. Sometimes it's just like a truthful account of history. And you start looking at history and you start realizing, oh, these ideas actually have very different origins than what I thought. And there's actually an opportunity, I would say, in the Christian faith to have people who disagree about what Scripture says, but agree that it's authoritative, and sit down and actually have rational conversations about what it means and how to think about it. And that space to kind of have uncertainty, to think through it, and to ask questions, I think is really important. In fact, I think when people don't experience that in the Christian faith, that's a very reasonable reason for why they left. I mean, like if it's just a bunch of closed answers that aren't very good, I mean, what's the point of hanging on to it anyways, right?